I'm gonna turn a video game character into a cake. Because today's video is sponsored by Capcom, who just launched Street Fighter 6. And I'm celebrating the launch by making a cake of one of the most iconic characters in the game. This cake is gonna look like an amazing edible action figure. I'm so excited for the cake and the game. There's a link in the description to learn more and get your Street Fighter 6 copy today. My name is Natalie Sideserf, and I make cakes that don't look like cakes. And today I'm going to make a cake of Ryu from Street Fighter. This is a cake armature that I built out of a bent metal pole with a cake board at the top. It has been a while since I made a cake that requires an armature. When I come up with a sculpted cake design that can't stand on its own, I have to build a sturdy armature to hold everything up. And I have to build it in a way that is hidden within the cake design. You're not gonna be able to tell it's even there when you see this finished cake. Well, hopefully. So what you're looking at here are Ryu's legs. He's in a lunging pose, like in the game. And he's also wearing white pants. So I get to sculpt all these folds in the fabric. I love sculpting fabric. This cake is already so much fun, and it's such an iconic game and character. People who don't even play video games know Street Fighter. In fact, when I decided to make this cake, I called my mom and I said, "Hey, do you remember Street Fighter?" And she was like,
"Yeah, everybody knows Street Fighter."
I told her I was gonna make this cake and she was all,
"Oh, that's great. You and your brother used to play."
I can't believe she remembered. In fact, my brother's favorite character was Ryu, and I would play as Chun-Li because she's also awesome. Did you notice my Chun-Li buns? Street Fighter originally released in 1987, so I imagine a lot of families played together. I wish I could play Street Fighter with my brother right now, but he lives in Tokyo, so wait a minute, I can play with him. I totally forgot that Street Fighter 6 has a new World Tour story mode with an online virtual lobby that allows you to play against other players from around the world. I can play with my brother even though he's in Tokyo. But the question is, do I play as Chun-Li, my go-to, or one of the newcomers like Kimberly or Luke, or do I play as myself? Because I can, and so can you. In World Tour mode, there's a new avatar customization system that lets you create your own character. I can make a Natalie avatar. You know, my brother hasn't seen me in years. It would be so fun to pop up in Street Fighter as my avatar, like, "Hey bro, it's been a while." Now that Ryu's cake torso is stacked, I'm going to cover it in a layer of modeling chocolate. This is where things get tricky. I've got some legs with a cake plopped on top. I have to somehow make this transition from legs to torso look natural, like a human, which is easier said than done, for me at least. I think this is the most difficult part about sculpting full-body characters, getting the proportions right. Ryu is exaggerated because he's a character in a video game. I don't believe that humans can be as muscular as he is, so I do have a little wiggle room, but I still have to make sure that the basic proportions make sense. And that's not even the hardest part of what I'm about to do. Getting his proportions correct isn't the only thing that I have to worry about at this stage of the cake. I also have to hide that armature, specifically the cake board. The largest part of this armature is the cake board that sits at his waist. And since it's large, it's really difficult to hide inside the sculpture. If I make his waist too skinny, there's no way to cut the cake board down to make it smaller. That cake board's in there's no going back. It's awkward to try to hide a big old cake board perfectly inside a sculpture, but it's gotta be in there. Otherwise, there's nothing to hold up the cake in this cake. So at this point, I think that I've done a decent job hiding it. The torso and the legs look proportionate to me. I think I'm on the right track. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but I have neglected my cake board. The bottom cake board, that is, that sits on the table. It needs to be painted, and I've put it off because I just wasn't sure what color I wanted to use initially. I was gonna paint it white, but I've changed my mind. I'm painting it black because his pants are white, and I feel like a white board would have washed them out. I feel like the black board's gonna make the cake pop. Let me know what you think. I'm making his arms out of modeling chocolate, and I'm blending it into the torso. When I first add the arms, that's when they're most fragile because the chocolate's really soft. But as the chocolate sits and gets back to room temperature, the chocolate will firm up, making the arm more secure. But until that happens, I gotta be very careful with the cake. Otherwise, his arm might start slowly drooping. It could just fall off. In Street Fighter 6, Ryu wears a red robe, which is what I'm sculpting right now. And I can't fit it under his arm. I just spent all that time sculpting his arm, and now it's in the way. This is very unfortunate, but I have to do it. I have to cut off his arm. Trying to sculpt the robe around it would have taken forever. So now I can easily get the robe under there. So it worked, even though I'm disappointed I had to cut the arm. I try my best to predict the best way to add new sections to the cake so I can avoid moments like this. What I should have done was add the legs, torso, robe, and then the arm. But sometimes I mess up. But you know what? I just gotta move on. These things happen. And now the forearm is back on, so I can start working on the head. That's just his neck. This is his head. His head's not that small. So I'm blending the neck into the torso and the chin. Everything's going as planned, and then I did this. A poked a hole in his neck. The cake's spewing out, making the chocolate all messy. So I'm trying my best to scoop some of that cake out of there because the chocolate crumbs are making him dirty. And now the hole's bigger. Okay, I can fix this. I am smushing a very, very soft chunk of modeling chocolate into the hole and trying my best to blend it. Just gotta take my time, blend it in. Everything's gonna be okay. All right, this has been a little difficult. This one's a hard one. A lot of bumps in the cake road today. And now it's time to sculpt the facial features, which is also really hard. But this isn't a surprise. Sculpting faces out of chocolate is always really difficult. And it's not easier because it's smaller, like you might think. It's really difficult to sculpt at such a small scale. So I'm mapping out the face before I get too detailed. I gotta get that placement right. This face is so tiny. I mean, how big could this nose possibly be? I'm gonna measure it. It is ½ an inch long. What size does that make the nostrils? The answer is
Itty bitty.
he's got
Itty bitty nose holes.
The last time I made a cake with a face this size was when I made a doll cake. But with that one, I made a mold of a real doll face to help me out. This whole face is hand sculpted. This face is so small that whenever I try to add a piece of chocolate, it doesn't want to stick. Stay on there for Pete's sake. All right, it's coming together. We have what looks like a face. Now I can go in and add fine details, like his beard hair and his headband. One of my favorite things about Ryu is his eyebrows. The arch in his eyebrows is magnificent. The arch is so extreme that it goes over his headband. It gives his face so much personality. Like, this dude is well trained. He's ready to fight. For his hair, I get to use one of my favorite cake sculpting tools ever. My little stork scissors. I just snip little bits of chocolate and it makes for amazing spiky Ryu hair. Cutting chocolate with scissors is so satisfying. I love doing it. Gotta give his bangs a trim. And I can't forget his ears. Look how small they are. I have to say, sculpting at this scale has been really fun. The face and hair are sculpted, and I finally feel like this cake is really coming together. Now I can really dive into the rest of the details. The things that are unique to Ryu. I've been working really hard on this cake. Some of my cakes are a little bit more light in the process, and then others are very intense. Head down, nonstop sculpting. And this cake is definitely the latter. I really hope you guys like it. And I hope my brother does too. He's a huge fan of Street Fighter. Why do I feel like I'm forgetting something? We've got legs, torso, arms, face, hair, hands. Oh, I never sculpted his feet. I haven't looked down there in a while. His feet are the last thing that I need to sculpt before I can start painting. This is also the last time I need to be aware of that armature and sculpt in a way that hides it. So I'm sculpting the foot and ankle around that pole. I really hope that I was able to hide that armature well. You saw it at the beginning. It was kind of a wild shape. I want you guys to be honest with me when you see the finished cake. Let me know if I hid the armature. And if I didn't, what gave it away? I welcome your opinion. It makes me a better cake artist. And now on to the step that I think really brings this cake to life. It's time to paint. When I sculpt chocolate, it's one flat color. That's why painting my cakes is so important. Building up thin layers of food color creates depth. I'm able to add shadows in the creases and highlights in any raised areas. One of my favorite techniques is to add a layer of dark color and then lightly wipe it away with a damp paper towel. It's such an easy way to create highlights. And whenever there's a fun textured edge, like on this robe, I like to really emphasize it with some white. Painting fabric is just as fun as sculpting it. Now his skin is looking very flat, so I'm adding thin layers of color. Some warm tones, some cool tones. This is really gonna help him look more real. I definitely wanna darken the creases around his arms because this is gonna make his muscles look huge. Because his muscles are huge. Street Fighter 6 has new features that go beyond your typical fighting game. So they managed to take a good thing and make it even better. They've added accessibility to all skill levels, so you don't have to be a pro to have fun playing. You can play up to 18 different characters, and the graphics are improved. The game looks fantastic. Speaking of looks, are you ready to see how this cake looks? Because I am just about done here and I love it. And there you have it, a cake of Ryu. This cake was a blast to make. Oh, and I gotta ask, do you think that I hid that armature well? Can you tell it's in there holding up that cake? This is going to be so fun to cut. Let's cut the cake. Well, that's a KO if I've ever seen one. Street Fighter 6 is available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4 and 5, and PC. Click the link in bio to learn more and get your SF6 copy today. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. I post a brand new cake every week. I'll see you next week for another cake.